Aquaba, if you are just joining us, this is part one of my final thoughts, and we are revisiting my own scholarly observations in a document I have titled The Reference. Picking up from referent number 1, the state of miseducation and its effect, that is, chaos and confusion it causes in every aspect of life, are elements that facilitate each of the remaining referents. Referent number 2, we are still in a mode I have dubbed crisis management. When our community is in crisis, we respond loudly with energy. We organize, we march, we petition, we boycott, we agitate. But when the crisis is over, we go about our business until the next crisis presents itself. We are literally not galvanized to action in our own behalf unless there is a crisis. The tragedy of this behavior is how the opportunity to stay organized, continue to strategize, and develop a long-range plan of ongoing actions is squandered. The energy that harnessed the crisis dissipates, and what could have been a turning point with long-lasting impact is wasted. Familiar examples include the Million Man and the Million Woman March in the United States, the immigration protests in Bermuda, and the Black Lives Matter marches that span the globe. In particular, local governments, companies, and individuals who promised to make real change as a result of the horrific public lynching of George Floyd have done very little to affect real change. What happened to what was supposed to be a society-changing shift? Crisis management and reactionary mode are close first cousins. We are a reactionary people because of the history that forced us to react to events imposed upon us, since our ancestors were brutally kidnapped and forced into bondage. A people who are consistently and regularly in a reactionary mode to circumstances of life begin to believe they have no power to actually create a different reality. Changing this mindset requires a proactive stance and a forward-thinking series of actions. Actions being the key word. If we're ever going to thrive in this 21st century, we cannot wait for others to do the work necessary to create a new reality for ourselves, our children, and our communities. Again, an essential part of this work includes addressing our state of miseducation by teaching ourselves and our children the truth of our history. To quote the Honorable Marcus Garvey, we are going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, because whilst others may free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. The man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of the other man who uses his mind. End quote. Referent number 3. We do not have privacy. Other groups meet privately on a regular basis to discuss and strategize for their communal well-being. We do not do this. Our meetings are open to the media and friends who have already developed the counterattack before we get our plan off the ground. This point was not lost on Dr. Paulu Camareka-Fago when he organized the Black Power Conference in Bermuda in 1969. Brother Paulu barred the press and white people from attending the conference proceedings, quite to their displeasure. They did not get a front row seat to our discussions, deliberations, debates, or plans. We need more of that in order to cultivate the trust needed to create communal well-being. Community building relies on trust as an essential element. It is no accident that the bonds of trust between us were purposefully destroyed in the age-old tactic of divide and conquer, still utilized by agents of white supremacy today. Most of us know that not all skin folk are kinfolk, but we do not necessarily act accordingly. We are in desperate need of cultivating small, confidential, private circles with people that we come to know and trust. This is a process that requires time, intention, and purpose. As outlined in Dr. Asa Hilliard's book, Seg2, The Reawakening of the African Mind, practicing Seg2, that is, reading, studying, discussing the history together, we begin to learn each other, our way of thinking, our capacities, our essential spirit. Relationship development based on our commonalities, care, mutual respect, and trust will lead to cooperation in the work of improving our communities. That level of work is normally difficult to do as an individual. I can tell you from personal and professional experience that what work I have been able to accomplish in this journey is a reflection of building trust with a small community of people, primarily in the United States and Bermuda. Referent number 4. We have accepted values and ideals which have not served us well as a people. Examples of this include a lack of standards. While some may bristle at the idea of standards, it is important to note that our ancestors created and established standards of excellence as a model for forward progress. Standards of right conduct are obvious in the ethical conception of Ma'at and the Yoruba tenet that tells us that we are to bring good into the world and that none of the good be lost. We witness the physical standard of excellence in the pyramids, with all of the skills that were mastered to bring this ancient, magnificent structure to fruition. A structure that still stands today and remains one of the great wonders of the ancient world. Do not apologize for doing your work with excellence and high standards. I have learned not to concern myself with people who are not about high standards, excellence, or are trustworthy challenged. This is especially important for the work of building community. I cannot emphasize enough that you must have integrity, be trustworthy, and have a standard of excellence in your own work, whatever that work is. What I know for sure is if you can't do it right, leave it alone. If you don't have the resources to properly execute your idea, wait until you do. Know what you do and do what you know. If you can't bring it with passion and excellence, just don't do it. We have had enough of that. Also, please note that integrity in your word and actions is all you really have in this life. Integrity and excellence is a reputation that gets built and respect is earned. Respect does not mean like. In that regard, I know I am not everybody's cup of tea, but then again, I drink strong coffee. What I also know is that pushback is a confirmation that you are moving the ball forward. After all, nobody pushes back if you're maintaining the status quo. Other important examples of skewed values that don't serve us include misplaced competition. This mode of operation has done more damage to African unity than any other Western ideal. Instead of cooperating to enlarge the pie, we compete against each other for a small and pitiful piece, a slice of the pie. Related to this idea is what I call the only room for one rule. Then there's individualistic materialism. This not only allows us to disconnect ourselves from each other, but assist in our self-destruction by defining success in materialistic, individualistic terms. Dr. Karanga called it vulgar careerism. I call it getting the MBA to get the BMW. And by the way, how many flat screen TVs and technological gadgets can we own? We must redefine success in our own image and benefit. Proverbs 3:31 tells us, envy not the oppressor and choose none of his ways. We must understand the dire implications of choosing materialism and straight up individualism with no connection, no care, no obligation for our community. Other values that do not serve us include overindulgence of entertainment, particularly television, cable, movie watching. It has been documented that our children watch more television than any other children, with an average of 5 or 6 hours per day. What does television tell our children about who they are? Further, we cannot always cry racism when our children are watching TV and playing video games and other children are studying. Related to this is our overinflation of sports culture. This particular misplaced value has become a replacement for academic achievement for our youth. Sadly, we can name several Black heroes of sports before we can name significant Black achievers and contributors to science, industry, law, education, history, and even politics. Again, this speaks to our miseducation. A value that we must begin to embrace is the idea of inner attainment versus entertainment. Inner attainment comes from within. It is reading materials that educate, inspire, or uplift. It is meditation, prayer, and contemplation. It is thinking deep thoughts, listening to good music, immersing yourself in nature, or being still, quiet. Inner attainment is part of the shift, along with redefining our values to serve our people as opposed to serving the status quo. We'll be right back.